Hi everyone, my name is Amanda and this is the Sew Comfort YouTube channel. I am so excited that you have taken a few minutes out of your busy day to learn about the wonderful world of sewing. I'm going to dive right into our topic for this episode, which is number 3, all about sewing thread. Now, in our very first video, I went over the number 1 sewing thread that you are going to need, which is all-purpose polyester 40 weight. Now, we went over a couple brands. In my private group, I was asked to go over different types because when my friend Shelly was going to the store, she found so many types of thread, she was overwhelmed. So I'm going to go over some of the most common. This is not an endorsement of any brand or any specific thread. Every thread has its purpose and its use, and every brand has its pros and cons. So I'm going to go over some of the ones that I have sitting in front of me. And the very first one I'm going to start with is cotton. Cotton is the longest running thread. It has been around the longest, and it comes in many different sizes of spools and brands. This is King Tut. It's a very expensive brand. This is silky. You can find it at most of your local stores like Joann. They come in different weights, usually in a 40 or 50 weight, just like your polyester. Just like any cotton material that you use for sewing, it can shrink, it can fade in the sun, and it doesn't take a whole lot of pressure to break it, or tension is what I'm talking about. So it breaks pretty easily. That's an issue when you're sewing machine sewing. You have to make sure your tension is right. Now this is a 30 weight and it goes through a machine without any issue. This one is a 12 weight and I can't get it to show up on the screen. It's very, very thick and my machine hated it, but it's wonderful for doing by hand. You saw some are variegated, some are solid. It just depends upon your project and what you're doing. This is usually used for quilting, for the final stitches that are decorative and pretty. And the reason people like it is that it shrinks along the same lines as the material. And so you're not going to get a pronounced pattern as you would with the polyester, which doesn't shrink when you wash it. So that's actually a reason for using a polyester, is because it doesn't fade and it doesn't shrink. This is, again, the 30 weight. Now, there's another type of quilting thread that is called spun polyester. And that is just like your machine thread, but it is twisted in such a way that it holds up to a lot more abuse from a high speed machine, like a long arm quilting machine. So when you, and 40 weight is typically what you find in that. So when you're doing quilting on a machine, you have to be careful with your tension because, again, a quilter's cotton will break and you'll have more starts and stops than with a polyester. Some people, it's just a preference thing. For some people, they just prefer cotton because that's what their grandmothers used and that's what their mothers used. And some people are like me. I'm like, I don't want to keep having to retie the end, so I'm going to use polyester pretty much all of my projects. So now that brings me to another type of polyester, and this is also a cone thread. This is for a serger. It is literally just a regular polyester thread, but it's on a cone so that you can put it in the machine like the one behind me, which is called a serger. And you typically need 3 or 4 to do the different stitches with that machine. Now the next one I'm going to go over, hopefully you can see this. This is upholstery thread, Coats and Clark upholstery thread. And this is nylon. Nylon doesn't break as easily. It's very strong. The tensile strength is what that's called, is very, very strong. but you'll see it's very thick. So it's actually difficult to get this to go through a sewing machine. You'll actually usually do this type of stitching by hand. Now this is used for couch cushions, repairing a bench or a chair. It's usually used with leather or vinyl type materials. And again, you're going to typically use it by hand or with a heavy weight professional sewing machine such as a Juki. Also in the serger, this is called bulky nylon by Gutermann or woolly nylon, which is its own brand. This is a nylon thread, and as you can see, it goes taut when you stretch it. This is used for lingerie or swimsuits so that you get a nice edge. Oh, it's also used in t-shirts. So it's used in the serger to give you a nice edge, and as it sews, it covers the stitches. So it actually covers more of your stitching than a regular thread would. So that's going to take me to our decorative threads. Now, decorative threads come in all different shapes and materials. There's silk, there's wool. Silk is usually used for embroidery when you want to stand out and look kind of classy. Wool is used typically on a wool felting piece. It's a lot of times used by hand. I don't have any of those as a sample to show you, but I do have metallic. And there's multiple types of metallic. There's the smooth, there's the variegated with the regular thread and a metallic thread mixed in between. And then again, another smooth one. There they are. And this is just a variegated embroidery thread. So all of those are used for decorative stitching. The problem with these is that you're going to need a special needle. You're going to want a metallic needle, and you're going to want to slow down your sewing machine, because the strength of a metallic such as this one, Gutermann, it's actually not very strong, and you can break it super easily. So you want to make sure you slow down your machine and that your tension is right. I dropped it again. Before you start sewing. Otherwise, you're going to get really frustrated with having to stop and start your pattern again. So other types of embroidery thread, we have, actually, looks like, oh, here we go. This is Madeira 40 weight polyneon is the name of this particular thread. This is wonderful. It's a polyester. It's not going to fade. It's not going to run. It's actually very strong. You don't have to slow your machine down. These are rayon. Rayon's a natural fiber. It can bleed into other fabrics, but typically it's color fast. You just want to test it before you put it on something you're worried about it bleeding into other threads. These are all different types that can be used on your sewing machine. This is actually glide. Glide can be used as a top stitch, a embroidery, or a quilting thread if you want shiny. Sometimes people will use embroidery thread for quilting because they want it to show up on their fabric. It's totally up to you what type of thread you're going to use. All you're really looking for here is that it's a good material. I personally find rayon breaks a little bit more than poly, but it's still a very good tensile strength, and it's a very good thread to use. This brand I've been showing you is Sulky. You can find this at your local store, including Joann. The glide is usually carried by quilt shops, and I actually have to buy Madeira online. Now you'll see the different size cones. This size will typically fit in a sewing machine. However, not this one won't. This is actually used for my 10 needle that has a platform like my serger behind me. Or you can use what's called a cone extension in order to use that type of thread in your machine. You can do the same thing with your serger thread or your quilting thread. Okay, so then that's going to take me to my last thread, which is invisible. This is a nylon thread. This one, particular one's by Sulky, but there's many of them out there. This is used for stitching that you don't want it to be seen. And it's kind of hard to knot. It's kind of hard to actually utilize it. But if you're trying to put trim on a garment or a bag and you don't want it to be seen, this invisible thread is what they call it, is what you want to use. And again, it's mostly going to be used by hand. Okay, so there you are, a bunch of different types of threads that you can use for your projects. Again, the majority of the time, we're just going to use a 40-weight polyester because it's easy. You can find it everywhere. It's not going to fade. It's not going to break easily unless it's 10 or 12 years old and been sitting in the sun. Please notate that no matter what type of thread you have, you want to have it protected from UV light. UV light actually will make your thread break down faster. So please don't store it on your wall in the fancy cones that you see at the store. Please put it in something like this cabinet behind me. I actually have 2 drawers back there full of all my specialty threads that are fairly expensive, and I don't want them to go bad. Because yeah, thread goes bad. And that sounds so silly. It's like, oh, it's kind of like the food in the refrigerator. Yeah, actually it's true. Thread can go bad over time. You'll also want to change them out after so many years. You want to test their tensile strength, and if they're starting to get brittle, you'll want to change them out, just like your makeup. Now, sewing's so weird. It's so much like other things that we do. So there you go. That is a lesson on thread. I am so glad that you decided to take a few minutes to share. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you would like to continue the conversation, please join us on our private Facebook group, Sew Comfort with Amanda. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you next time.